What's up, guys? As promised, I'm going to continue making content like this where I'm talking directly to the audience, going to go through important topics and issues that are in current events, in social justice, in science and environmentalism, and also continue to talk about upcoming music and art events in the DC area that I'm going to be involved in. First of all, I want to point out that it's just breaking news that Israel has launched some sort of attack on Tehran, Iran, and it's important to keep in mind that Israel and the United States are often working together. They're one of our major allies, unfortunately, and it's creating a global instability. What's going on in the world right now, and particularly what Israel is doing in the Middle East. And it's something that needs to be addressed, something that we need to talk about more often. I know that there is often discussions about these things, at least in my sphere, but it's always good to incorporate that in everything that we're doing to remind ourselves that we can change the world if we work together and speak against what we believe is wrong and what we believe needs to change. And also recently, Israel bombed the internet connections across Gaza, and a lot of those people are without internet. A lot of people at the U.S. and Israel-run Gaza Humanitarian Fund died today and were under attack. And, it's difficult for journalists in Gaza to get the word out on what is going on right now because of the internet outage, which also started just today. And this seems to be a dual advancement of Israel to, really get ahead of the situation to make sure that their goals are met when it comes to taking and being in control of lands outside of Israel, both in Gaza and Iran and Lebanon and the surrounding region. There is, a presence of a stronghold that Israel is trying to create with the support of the United States to take control of that region. And it seems like we're moving forward and toward, consistently over the decades, and particularly right now, accelerated with this current president toward, higher tensions and wars over resources. And it's just something that we should all be aware of, that this is what we're funding when we pay our taxes and when we purchase, our gasoline and, our consumerist ideals and of capitalism and usage. And as long as these politicians and corporations feel that it is in the Americans' interest, their consumers, to continue this cycle of consumption, then they're going to do what it takes to continue the process and to continue the system. And so remember that when you spend your money on things that require petroleum, it's pushing forward these corporations and politicians to secure more petroleum every single time. Anything plastic, anything that oil, any resources that are using, whether it's metal or even wood, is gonna push corporations to gain access and control over more resources. So just keep that in mind when you're consuming. Try and consume as little as possible, because realistically the amount that our government is trying to access and provide for us is not sustainable for the planet. It's not sustainable for the other people who live in these places. And I feel like there's a divide because there's a lot of people who know this and are speaking against this. And I feel that right now what's going on with the military presence in LA, which should be starting, sometime soon, they're all setting up still, as far as the National Guard and being set up in California and LA. They're going to start taking action in LA to protect ICE and to protect their center in which they hold people who are abducted by ICE. So there's a lot of things going on right now. There's constantly a lot of things going on, but I feel that right now is a point of tension in which control is being reached for. And it's like a point of no return almost when we have extreme military presence both in the United States and in other countries, being propagated by consumerism and a control of resources. So I just want to say that just to get off my chest. I'm going to continue, like I said, to talk about these things and to continue to talk about what is going on in the world and just kind of get off my chest. I feel like I can't just share it to my stories anymore. I have to talk about it. But I'm also going to talk about my personal life, just as I have been on here, and just let you know that there are some things that we're planning. As far as gatherings, there's going to be an event here at my house on June 20th, a dream gathering event, and it's going to start with a discussion of social justice and event safety. So that's Friday, June 20th in Alexandria, and there's information on my pages. And we're also going to have a Lucid Lounge, creative music and art space set up at several festivals this summer at Camp, which is short for Calling All Magical People, at Ramblewood, which is July 4th weekend. It's going to be an amazing Burning Man style event. We're also going to have a setup at Big Dub, and I'm going to be at Elements running the Healing Garden. So if you want to go to those festivals, definitely let me know, because I'm going to have a team of people running a creative and healing and space at those festivals. And if you want to talk about social justice, then please come to my birthday party or gathering, the Dream Gathering, on June 20th, which is here in Alexandria. So thank you guys for tuning in and listening to me say what I have to say what I felt like I wanted to say, because I've just been watching the news and sharing, stories of what's currently happening. For example, also the Freedom Flotilla, which is a small group of 9 activists who sailed from Italy to Gaza, was intercepted by Israel, carrying a symbolic amount of resources that was intercepted. Greta Thunberg was on the boat. She was released pretty quickly, but there was also a UN member of parliament and other activists which have not been released and are still still in Israel, I believe, in their jails. And there's also thousands and thousands of other activists and Palestinians in Israel jails, which are known to be horrific, and across the board, from the Israel police force, the Israel military, prisons, and their treatment of people on the street, including murder and rape. There has been just a litany of war crimes by the Israelis, and I know war is a terrible thing and a lot of people get hurt, but the problem is that has not been transparency about what is going on, or public discussions, or even any sort of accountability for the things that they're doing. Even the UN has put a warrant for Netanyahu's arrest for genocide. And, we're seeing the foundation of our international organizations like the UN and like the United States military just really fall apart right now. And this veil has been lifted that, the stability, the international stability that we see is only stable if the United States political and economic elite feel that it's just. And if they don't feel that it's important, or they feel that it's worth it for them, then it doesn't matter. The UN carries no teeth. International war crimes carry no meaning unless the United States military is willing to enforce these things, and they're not. They're supporting it and funding it. And we're kind of seeing the whole facade of the UN and everything that it stands for kind of fall apart. And that's happening right in front of our eyes. So it's really important to be vigilant and be aware, and, realize that the United States has had protests against its government since its foundation. There has always been, issues that people need to speak out against, from their expansion in the West and their treatment of Native Americans and breaking all of their deals, to the treatment of African Americans, and even to this day with Black Lives Matter and the police being overly violent. Sorry, my camera died there. But I just wanted to continue to point out that, there's always been protests against every government, including the United States, and that our government is fallible. It's not infallible. And there's always been problems, particularly with racism and military control, even within our country. I mean, a lot of citizens have never really felt like they have full control or respect from the United States government, even the people who live here. And a lot of, Native American, African American, even Mexican Americans, didn't necessarily choose to be in the United States, and their lands were taken by military force, or they were brought here by force. And, the uprising against the United States government isn't one just of, progressive nature. It is one of indigenous and native rights, I believe, still ongoing rights that have never been granted, in my view. That, that's a deeper conversation, but I feel like when people are protesting against the government, it's not just about one thing necessarily. And anyway, I feel like the United States is responding, especially right now, with authoritarian rule, with military force. And this has been seen in the last Trump presidency, that's how he responds to the protests. That's how he responded to the Black Lives Matter protests, with negligence and militarized police force. And I'm seeing that right now with the international issues going on in Ukraine and in the Middle East, that we're sliding towards a situation where, the United States military is like perceiving that it needs to take control. That's not necessarily true. I think that it's an over-exaggeration. It's a fear-based mentality that the neoconservatives and neoliberals who believe in a strong military, kind of a neocolonialism, living in fear that we're not going to have the resources to live our consumer-based capitalist lives. And I don't think that's something that we need to fear. I think that we need to change our lives. And it's not just because of limited resources, it's also because of environmentalism and the destruction of the planet. And we're seeing a mass extinction happening across the planet, and one that is irreversible and is going to take a toll on our ecosystem, which we depend on, which we are a part of. And I know you guys know this, but I just want to start this conversation. I think it's important to start this conversation because once you start the conversation, you start to open more doors and connect more people with the truth. And it's not easy. It's not just a simple fact of like, oh, we shouldn't destroy nature. Of course, everyone probably agrees with that. But the complexity of living in a modern society with all of the luxuries that I have in my life, it does take a lot of resources. And that's why it is complex of how we're going to transition into a more sustainable lifestyle, one that is peaceful for everyone. And it's obviously possible, but ultimately the solution is a lot of mundane and boring conversations that need to happen. And so that's why I just want to get started and start having these conversations. So thank you guys for listening. I'm going to continue this conversation, continue to stay updated about what is going on in the Middle East and in Ukraine and in LA with the protests and the conflicts. Let's pray for those who are in Iran, who are under attack now, in Gaza and Israel, and in the United States, in Ukraine. Because ultimately, even the people of Israel and the people of Russia and us Americans are at risk here from these wars. We're at risk because of the decisions of our politicians and our militaries. So it's putting all of us in danger on all sides. And we need to recognize that the people who are making these decisions are doing it often in selfish motivations for their own financial benefit. And we need to stop that, but first we need to talk about it and understand what is going on and keep up to date with the current news. And I'm going to do my best to kind of continue this conversation and have this continued conversation with you. Thank you.